BRTuk, as many of you will know, is a ginger group which was created some 15 years ago under the auspices of my friend Dr. Bob Tebb, whom I like to think of as father of bus rapid transit in the UK. Our purpose is to spread knowledge and good practice in the field, not just of bus rapid transit, but high quality bus operations right across the board. These lunchtime masterclasses are one of the ways that we at BRTuk can compensate for the lack of a live conference, once our lifeblood year after year. But the good news is that we are going to run a conference on Merseyside next year, 16th of March 2022. So make sure you keep a note of that date. Meanwhile, here we are for just an hour at lunchtime on a Thursday, starting 4 weeks ago and running through to the end of November. Short and sharp, we'll be all over by 1:30 p.m. So, to Alex, I first met him when he was a transport student at University of Aston in Birmingham, and I had the good fortune to attract him into Stagecoach South Midlands as a placement student for the year. We were based at Rugby and I was the operations director there at the time. Now, Alex is CEO at Transdev Blazefield. He heads a team of 1,350 people across 10 locations in Lancashire and Yorkshire, running over 550 buses. He says the company's aim is to provide successful, well-marketed and customer-centric products for people using buses that people want to be seen on. And that's his topic for today. He started his career at the age of 15 doing work experience at his local bus depot, I think that was Arriva, before graduating in transport management at University of Aston, where he gained his PCV whilst on placement with us at Stagecoach South Midlands. He enjoyed time in managerial roles thereafter at Stagecoach and Go Ahead in Kent, Manchester and Hampshire before becoming commercial director at Trent Barton in the East Midlands. He's been with Transdev for the past 6 years, helping to grow the scale of the business and customer numbers through network enhancements and several significant contract gains, as well as 2 acquisitions. He lives in Harrogate with his wife Rachel and son Jack, and he's on the Harrogate Electrics 2B bus route. That's very important. Now, we have just the time until 1:30 for Alex to talk, but also to answer your points and questions. So please do put your questions, be brief, be clear in the chat, and I'll endeavour to pick them out and put them to Alex when we break, which we'll do several times during the presentation. The programme is being recorded, by the way, because a significant number of people watch after the event. So, Alex, it's my great pleasure to welcome you as our lunchtime masterclass speaker this Thursday. Over to you.
Thank you very much, James. Yes, it's always difficult to follow a James Freeman introduction, but I will do my very best. So good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much for taking out your time to listen to me. And hopefully what I say will generate some questions and some good discussion as well. So even though we're virtual, hopefully we can create that feeling of being together and creating some good dialogue. So yeah, so when James asked me to talk, we came with the subject of buses people want to be seen on, and that's a mantra that we live by here at Transdev. We're very keen that people are attracted to use our services by choice, not because they feel they have to, and that's what drives a lot of our commercial and growth agenda. So if we go to the next slide. The first thing I want to talk about is before we actually get to the buses, you have to lay a foundation as to get there, because it's you need to make sure they're delivered properly, correctly, and as they should be. And that involves getting a plan, getting a team together, and really deciding what kind of company you want to be from the inside as much as from the outside. So on the next slide, you'll see the agenda that we try to set out. The buses aren't something that should exist in isolation. They should be integral to the towns and cities they serve, and they should be integral to the plans that are going on in those towns and cities. We should get to know the people that make the decisions. we should be embedded into other activities that are going on that can help drive the growth of bus use. That's the environmental agenda, the economic agenda, the social agenda, and all those type of things that are happening in the towns and cities that we're in. We created this image you see before you now as something to influence how buses should be built back better after in inverted commas the pandemic. And actually, as you can see here, it's trying to get people that if we are to build our economy back, the buses should be integral to that, because they can create free-flowing cities, they can reduce congestion, they can reduce harmful emissions. Two key points that should be on the government's agenda, and certainly are in the decarbonisation agenda and in an economic growth agenda. So if we come to the next slide, one firm way we feel that you deliver this is by local brands. And local brands isn't just paint on the side of a bus and a name on the side. Brand is who you are, who you believe you are, who you set out to be. Even though we are part of a huge multinational transport group headquartered in another country, they give us full empowerment to present buses as we see fit locally, and that's how Transdev operates across the globe. Obviously, we're a little bit different to other parts of Transdev. We're in a fully deregulated environment here in the north of England, but we position each of our brands, each of our companies as local bus companies, because we want our local people, our local colleagues, our local customers, our stakeholders to firmly believe that they are their local bus company and take ownership of that. That, as I say, isn't just about writing Harrogate Bus Company on the side of a bus in Harrogate. It's about truly believing that. So it's about being friends with all the people that make the decisions, as I say, the local newspaper, the local radio station, the local media outlets, the local Facebook groups, the local event makers, schools, big employers, you name it. You know, we want to make sure when they think about how people should move around the town that we're based in, that they think about us at the top of their minds. And we feel the most effective way to do that is to make sure that our brands match that local expectation. I'll talk a bit more later about how our brands then fit that desirable and the expectation of our customers separately. But this is essentially a building block as to how we ultimately want to create a bus that people want to get on. And you'll see some of the images here. It's about, we have buses named after local schools. We have buses that celebrate the work of our communities. We have buses that celebrate local celebrities. You can see Sir Tom was a resident. He was born in Keighley. We celebrated our nurses during the pandemic. And we write all the kind of things about why we love being in the towns and cities that we're lucky to serve. On the next slide. And the probably key building block, you create a plan. The key building block to any plan is people. You can't do anything without people. They need to be well motivated. They need to be proud of the company they work at. They need to feel they take ownership of what they do, and they need to believe in what the company's plan is. So it's about creating a plan, creating a vision that we have, a mission statement, all that sort of stuff, but actually then making sure we work so hard to make sure our people believe in it. Obviously, during the pandemic, that was a key moment to make sure our people were recognised and thanked and praised in our local communities, and that's what we did. And we put our drivers at the forefront of that, and we even wrote on the front of our buses how when buses go past, give them a thumbs up and things like that. So all about bringing some positivity, cheerfulness, and making our people feel good. They are the people who will drive our decision making. They will give us the ideas. They will motivate us to do a good job. We can have all the greatest ideas in the world. They mean nothing if you haven't got the right people to do it. The next slide. So we spent a lot of time in making our people feel good and giving them as good as environments that we give our customers. Because if we make our colleagues feel good, they'll go out there and they'll look after our customers well. So while we are investing in our buses and the environment we give to our customers, at the same time, in parallel, we've spent a lot of time over the past few years investing in the environments that our colleagues are in. So we have attractively, again, well-branded, attractively presented academies that our colleagues are welcome to on their first day, where they come back to their training. And this kind of standard is being matched in our canteen areas and our rest areas. So again, our colleagues feel that this is a company that cares about them. And when they're not in their buses and doing their thing with their customers, they feel they're well looked after. And this is the kind of standard that we set out to create. The walls are littered with comments from customers that say how great our drivers are, and that's one reason why they choose to use our buses. And that's exactly how we position it. On the next slide, you'll see you see the academy in action, again with a mission statement behind them. But it just creates this environment that we like to think isn't typical for a bus company, but it does help us when we're recruiting, and there's no more pressure time than any to make sure that we're doing that. On the following slide, please. And you'll see, as well as giving people the right environment to feel good in, you know, we make sure that we use any opportunity to make sure our people feel good about themselves as well. When people pass their test, we take their photos, we make them feel good, we write their names on things, we tweet about them, we do all sorts of things. So people feel that real sense of achievement. And I think actually people, when you pass your driving test, it's one thing that I don't think certainly before this, we didn't do enough of. It's actually a huge achievement for some people, and they're so proud of it. And that's exactly what you can see here. On the next slide, then, is giving them the right uniform, the right presentation, so they feel really good to do their jobs. These are 4 of our drivers on our Which Way route that runs between Burnley and Manchester, and you'll see how it all fits together in terms of what the bus looks like on the outside, the inside. All the drivers have got their name badges on, and it isn't difficult when you ask them to have their photo taken. You know, bus drivers are the kind of people that don't like to have their photos taken and celebrated. These 4 were as proud as punch. They were there for hours having their photos taken with their new buses, with their smart uniforms on. You know, they love it, and you know, that kind of thing sums it up. On the next slide as well, you'll see how we actually, when we launched our 36 a couple of years ago, we were really proud of our buses, but the symbolic moment was the buses gave way to how we wanted our drivers to look and how we wanted our colleagues to look and feel at one with them. So yes, in order to do the next part of the plan about creating buses people want to be seen on, you've got to get your people in the right place and in position first. On the next slide. And as well as making them feel good and look good and all that sort of stuff while in their job, it's about celebrating and thanking not just them, but their families as well who support them. Every year we have a huge celebration, typically at the National Media Museum in Bradford, which is a brilliant venue. Sorry if they're not. I'm not on commission, but it's a really good place to do it. It's central to our network, and you'll see how we reward our best performers, and you can see how happy they are. They come along, they bring their partners with them, and it's just one of those great occasions where we make them feel good about the job that they're in, the company they're at, and we celebrate, reward, and thank them for their efforts in front of their peers. And that, again, it's all about how we make people feel good to then deliver the right kind of product we want to deliver to our customers. I think we have a break on the next slide. I'll hand over to James shortly.
Yes, thank you very much, Alex. All about people. It's really interesting, isn't it? The questions are pouring in. Actually, all kinds of things coming into quite a lot of them, not about what you've already been saying, but what you're going to be saying. Which so I think we try and keep on the issue of all about people. But there's a couple of interesting things here. What do you know about, and what's your view of the apprenticeship route that some companies, Go Ahead London, for example, use for developing drivers?
Yeah, we're well plugged into that, James. We actually had a visit at Go Ahead London, and I mean that kind of business. I mean, we are a collection of small companies, so some of the sort of higher volume things that some companies can do, we struggle with a little bit. For example, we up until now haven't even had a delegate examiner because we haven't needed to. Generally, people have come to us, they've stuck with us, they haven't left. Our turnover rate has been so low that some of the newer things that have now been tried out and been brought to the forefront have not been on our radar because, quite frankly, you know, we haven't needed to try other things. Obviously, in terms of apprenticeships, we've a lot of success in engineering apprentices by some of the typical routes, but we've also been using the apprentice level a lot more in terms of training, so how we train up drivers into supervisors and so on and so forth. So I think it's a valuable thing, but it's also about you need the volume sometimes and that affordability to do it. And I know Go Ahead London they're a massive business compared to us, and they can get around those things better than we can.
Yeah, I can see that. There are loads of questions. I'm just going to take one more and then we'll let you get on. But this is an interesting one. It's a comment in a way, but it's a question too. Would you say that buses that are easy to get on is even more important than wanting to be seen on. Multi-door boarding, all fare paying off board, spacious layouts means reduced dwell times, reduced anxiety-inducing interactions with drivers, and an easier to use service. What's your comment on that comment?
I get worried about that says reduce interaction with drivers, because I love the idea of interaction with drivers, and I think part of it is about what do you think your priorities are. Now, in terms of easy boarding, fast boarding, to us that's not a huge concern, because we're not a very frequent urban operator. We're predominantly an interurban operator, and we run in towns with generally lower frequency services that we can afford to bake time in and make sure we were reliably. So I think it's about, again, deciding what kind of business are you, what you feel your priorities are. We'd like to feel that we put ourselves in the shoes of the customer, and how do we make the customer feel good? And let's try and make the customer feel good, and then let's think about the operation issues after that. They're important, but let's make the customer feel good first.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, let's get on. Part 2.
Okay, so the next bit then is making the bus a feasible choice, and making sure that it is a journey that you want to make, as we say here. So on the first slide, it's about how do we communicate with our customers? How do we communicate to the non-user? How do we communicate with the ongoing user to make sure that they come back for more? So we do lots on app technology and online technology, and you'll see here, the typical things that feature our app, your live times, your Uber style tracking of the bus, so you can see where it is. You can see the features of the bus, how many people are on it. So we've got all this data. Let's use it. Let's make it fully transparent to the customer, so it gives them extra confidence to use the bus. And the bit that we can't do the bit that says there's a car outside, you can jump in it and off you go. But we can load the customer with information to make them feel as confident about the journey they're about to make, what they should expect when they get there. Obviously, the app has got mobile ticketing on and so on and so forth. So again, we're increasingly improving the app. We want to put our drivers' names on there so people can rate their ride and things like that. So we need to make it, first of all, to the standard that Uber would create, and then what more can we then do to get it as close to the convenience of a car? We know we can never get to the convenience of the car in terms of you being able to walk outside your front door and off you go, but there are a hell of a lot of other things we can do in terms of overall journey time, where we drop people off in the city centre, all that kind of stuff that we can make the attractors to it, and the app is a really helpful way of doing that. Saying that though, on the next slide, we are not moving away from paper information. Our research shows, and even the latest DFT research shows that I saw was published earlier this week, shows that actually online information and paper information are on a par, particularly for people making first-time journeys. I shudder about when I see operators moving away from paper-based material. It's not expensive. It's a nice, easy thing to cross out of your costs to make someone feel good, but actually producing paper-based information that you can distribute on your buses in loads of other locations. The great thing about buses sometimes is you can use them for free advertising in a way that Tesco can't. If Tesco said, right, I want to put these bus timetables, I want to put my catalogues everywhere, they will be shunned and told to go away. Bus timetables you can put everywhere, and everybody loves them, and you can put them to people's door, and people keep them. Hotels put them in their hotel rooms, etc., etc., etc. Why would we not do that? And as well as that, we can put them on our buses, and that's one thing. We are very strict in what we do. All of our buses carry timetables, and that we believe is an ideal way. It easily covers the cost of that investment in encouraging people not to make just new journeys, but to make existing customers make extra journeys. And it's all about, as well, obviously make them attractive, make them so you want to pick them up and look at them as well. And so that's something we strongly believe in, alongside our online and app offer as well. So we're serving all of our customers. On the next slide. So that's about preparing the customer with the right kind of information, so it becomes something that becomes attractive to do. And then the same point is then when we get to the bus stops and bus stations. We were very fortunate in Lancashire at Rawtenstall bus station that the council literally handed the bus station over to us and said, well, you do your worst, then you do what you think would make it an attractive place to be, an attractive place to use our buses. So we branded the stops, the individual totems you can see there, the same as the buses, which is actually what should happen really. And I think some of the pitfalls in what people say about regulation and control is that often in local authority areas, we create this huge gulf between what the bus looks like and what the bus shelter and stop looks like. So often in terms of quality, but certainly sometimes in terms of brand and visibility. But here, it's an entirely joined up experience, and I'd encourage you, go to launch store. If you don't like it, tell us why, give us feedback. But you'll see we put a lot of effort in to make it a bright place to be and something that is then in tune with the buses that you get on. On the next slide. And the more enlightened local authorities actually give way in their bus stations to us. Again, it's an investment from us. We've got to pay for it. But Metro, West Yorkshire Combined Authority in West Yorkshire have said, if you want to brand your stands, there you go, get on and do it. And so we have done. So in lots of the bus stations in the West Yorkshire region, we have fully branded the stands. We bought and designed our own panels, you can see here, with our information, and full credit to Metro for doing that, because that's what they believe in what we're trying to do. And you'll see how the image of the stand matches the image of the bus. Even more critical on something like here, an airport service where you have an unfamiliar, irregular user perhaps using it, it gives them that confidence they're in the right place and it all matches together. On the next slide, you'll see how we do it at the airport as well. So it's all very clear. You can do loud and crass in a nice way, and hopefully that's what we managed to do here. On every stand in the airport, we show the times that's going on at every single departure point, where all the buses are going. So every stand has a full guide to all the buses serving the airport, as well as clear labelling of the individual stops as well. And some of this is not, I can assure you, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to sometimes seek forgiveness, not permission, which is something we like doing sometimes. But it's about how can we push people to think and show them the way. And we're lucky to work with several enlightened local authorities that allow us to do that, and then in turn allow other operators to get on and do it as well after they see how well it can function. On the next slide. So it's marrying that up to the buses here, the buses on the stand. What else do we do? So we were one of the first practitioners of actually putting on the front of the bus the time it's leaving. So again, you're marrying that bit from the bus stop to the bus itself. So at key stops, we have an automatic countdown display that is now fully driven by GPS. It's fully automated. And when the bus is waiting, an announcement says to the customers on the bus that we're waiting for a bit, and the display appears on the bus to let customers know when it's going. Really, really helpful in bus stations. Really helpful when you have drivers changing over and buses are sometimes left. Drivers are human beings. They sometimes need to have a wee and sometimes need to have a coffee. But putting that display up there is so helpful. And you'll see there how we're beginning to embrace newer technology. We have several e-ink displays that we're putting up at our bus stations. So that is a live rotating display. It gets rid of journeys from early on in the day, so customers can see the next journeys happening. It's really clever tech that we're beginning to roll out at our locations. Solar power driven as well. No need for wires everywhere, but a really clever way to have live information at the stand. And you can see that there on the 36 on that sort of e-ink display at the Harrogate bus station. Okay, on the next slide. Yes, a further example of how we put the countdown display on, and as I say, it goes down into seconds as well. And it just gives customers that extra opportunity to say, that gives them the confidence. If there's no driver there as they're performing a changeover, our general standard is the drivers should be with their bus 5 minutes beforehand and are loading customers 5 minutes beforehand. But at times as well, obviously people can see if the bus is there, I've got time to grab a coffee, whatever. It just gives people that extra confidence, and also proves that we're driven by punctuality as well, and we're telling everyone we're driven by punctuality. Okay, and then finally on this point is how we integrate with other modes as well. And lots of the points we do in terms of integrating with other modes are stuff that we've gone out there and looked out for ourselves, because often it's not something that local authorities bring together on in terms of that important pinch point when you go from one mode to another. Full credit to Network Rail in Leeds. They've allowed us to put our branding on the signage at Leeds Station so people could transfer to airport buses. They've allowed us to vinyl the floors so people are signposted to the bus stop. And in our leaflets, our commercial leaflets that we pay for and fund ourselves, it has a full guide to rail connections. You can buy your train ticket all the way to Leeds Bradford Airport. It just so happens the last bit of the journey is on rubber wheels and there's a bus. Why should the customer care? As far as they're concerned, it's one journey, it's public transport. And the same we do with coach connections as well. You can buy a through journey on Megabus, on Flixbus and on National Express all the way to the airport. And we do that on several routes, not just the airport. We do it on coastline to Whitby because the route from York to Whitby is not so convenient by on train. In York Station, our coastliner bus appears on the platform indicators as if it's a train, saying the platform happens to be outside of the bus stop for coastliner. And again, just and all those things that are all done by us and the rail operators in usual cases, just having a chat and getting on and doing it. You need a like-minded person in the rail company, though, to do it. It's not often just the MD or the commercial director. It's about just finding the right person who will make it happen. And then in turn, on our latest displays inside our buses, we show live times of rail journeys inside the bus as it approaches train stations and live times of buses departing bus stations. And again, not just our buses, but the rail network. And also now in Manchester, we show the free bus network around the city centre of Manchester because that's often a good connection to people there. All about, getting people in the right place and doing it. And I haven't even spoken about buses yet, James, but I'll hand over to you for a second.
Well, no, absolutely. The questions, of course, have romped ahead of us again and are roaming around all over the topic. But interesting comment that has been put in the chat is, do you think that we could change the title around to towns where people don't want to be seen driving? How do you feel about that?
Absolutely, I'm all up for that, and I think that's exactly what we want it to be, isn't it? So yeah, no, all up for that. You can be on your marketing manager.
There you go. Now, the world is changing, isn't it, Alex? Enhanced partnerships are coming along. Things are going to look different. How is that going to impact on brands? And have you had any conversations with anyone about that yet?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really gladdened our hearts was that the 36, which I'll talk about shortly, was actually singled out in the National Bus Strategy of something you should not change. So we've actually got a lot more belief out there, I think, more so lately than there used to exist in previous years, of not just officers at DFT, but also we find that local officers at local level who are beginning to think that this brand thing actually is something that works and we should not fiddle with it too much. We have some authorities that are totally dead against it and want a generic product for everywhere. But interestingly, though, even in Greater Manchester, they do single out the busway as something that should stand out. So we're saying, well, if that should stand out, why should this really not stand out? And why should a customer riding on a suburban route in Wigan feel the same as someone riding an express route from Burnley to Manchester along a motorway that's probably on the bus for an hour and a half compared to someone that's So we've started to get some belief around that, and you'll see what West Yorkshire have allowed us to do there. So we are picking up in our partnerships that people want more and more local brands, and they begin to see the benefits of what some of the more enlightened operators are doing around brand.
Cool. Just one last thing on this before we move on. Do you have any situations, Alex, in Transdev where there's a different operator operating tendered evening or Sunday services, or vice versa? And if so, how do we tackle that when it comes to branding? Even if it wasn't one of yours, how would you tackle it?
Win the tender, I think, is the first bit. But yeah, if you can't do that. I think again, it's what can we do in terms of particularly tickets, and that's the first bit. What can we do to solve that? And we had a situation in York, but again, enlightened MD running First York, chat between the two of us, right? What can we do to sort this out? And actually, we don't mind taking the hit if it means customer buys ticket for the daytime, even if someone else is running it of an evening. Again, it's an investment in that customer for the week or for the times they travel in. So I think the brand bit is more of an issue. But again, I think what more could be done for the daytime operator to make it as attractive and as enticing as possible for the local authority that they should run the evening and Sunday work, and perhaps that's where the work should be put in by the daytime operator to make that happen.
This is sometimes a question of lowest cost wins, isn't it? Which
could be, yeah.
Again, it depends on the local authority. Right, let's move on then. Okay. Back to the future and part 3.
Okay, so on the next, so we're onto the bus itself now. So first of all, this is about creating the bus as the right kind of image that you look at it and say, I want to get on that. And a lot of this is about livery, brand, and messaging. So on the first slide, well, the title of the presentation, we're not afraid to write this on the side of our buses. And I think you can't get, I don't think you can get more of an aspirational message as that. And you could say, we put ourselves on a hide into nothing, but we deliberately do that because we want this to be our aim every day. So it's about making sure our buses look the part and motivating everyone around that they've got to live by this mantra. Sometimes we'll fail, but when people know we're living by it, they should learn from it and we'll put it right as quickly as we can. And this is the kind of image that we're setting out to achieve. On the next slide, you go to one of our sort of most visible and well-known branches, the 36. Runs every 10 minutes between Leeds and Harrogate, and every 20 minutes off to Ripon. The 36 has been a story over the past 20 years of something that can ably compete with the car and rail, and give people a product that they want to be seen on. And this is in a town like Harrogate, which I can assure you is a relatively wealthy town. Everyone's got 5 Jaguars and 4x4s on their driveways. But you give them the right product by doing research, by talking to non-users, by talking to users, and create the right kind of bus that they want to be seen on. In Harrogate, people don't use the bus; they use the 36. They're very proud that they use the 36. If I'm ever out with my name badge and coat on, I am often pulled by people to say, I like using the 36. That happened to us once in quite a decent restaurant. I was with my boss, and that made everyone feel very happy. So these kind of things is important in terms of brand and image and creating the right kind of livery. And also, I will give a plug to one of our closest partners and friends, Race Denning and Best Impressions. Get the experts in to do it. They know how to present brands properly. Work with them, give them the local knowledge, give them the information, and they will present your buses beautifully, as we believe we do here with the 36. On the next slide, the Which Way is another one of our strong interurban products. Again, typical journey time of around an hour for people. Burnley, down the motorway to Manchester, generally goes the way the car goes, which is an important part of designing how this isn't just about the bus, it's about designing the network so it appeals to people who aren't bus users. But you'll see as well, very striking images. These things make normal people, not just strange people like me, James, and I'm sure there's on this call, make them look at them. These make normal people look and go, wow, and they really do. They're like cruise ships when they go down the road in Manchester. On the next slide. And then about the messages we put on the back as well. I mentioned that just earlier about we go the way you drive your car, and it does. Cities app or in between York and Leeds, runs along the motorways and literally goes. If you were going from York to Leeds, that's the way it goes. It goes non-stop, all that way to and it's about creating the right kind of not just delivery and brands, but also the right messages that fits in with that. On the next slide. And then even on our other brands, so what I've just shown you there are sort of our long distance. I'll be honest, not the cheapest bus fares in the world. You're talking sort of £8 return between Leeds and Harrogate, £10 return between Leeds and York, and between Burnley and Manchester. But then even on our more local buses, like our flyer network from the airport, we still put a lot of effort into how those brands are created as well. While we know we have about 40 to 50% of our users have access to a car, that remains our market that we have to carry on going after. And while people are driving cars around our buses, we have to see them as an opportunity. On the next slide. And obviously, zero emission fits into it as well. So how do we create buses that aren't just look good, but how do we create them aspirational? And zero emission electric is obviously a key point at the moment. And again, we've had a lot of battles with manufacturers to remind them that it isn't just about it being electric and zero emission. We need to make sure the inside of the bus and the outside of the bus remain attractive to customers. And I remember some of the early incarnations of electric and hydrogen buses, they had hardly any low floor seats. You had to walk halfway down the bus before you found a seat. And then there were 3 on the low floor section. Well, design floor shouldn't have been allowed to leave the factory. Yeah, it's powered by hydrogen, but that's not the point, is it? We build a bus for people, not just so we can move it around. And again, what we've done in Harrogate with our electric buses, we sweated out sweat and blood and tears and all sorts in the factory in Poland with Volvo, saying we don't want a basic bus, we want something that makes people in Harrogate feel good to get on them. And that's what we feel we achieve, and then integrate that whole message in making people good that it's electric. So we plant trees for every 100,000 zero emission mile we do, and a whole host of things. We do free buses on Sundays, and we make people feel good about buses. So it's not just about the fact it's electric or zero emission. It has to be part of a package that makes people feel good, because it's not high on the average bus customers or even car users agenda. High to us and high to many on this call, but we have to remember what do our customers think, and so it's about integrating all that message together. Okay, and we're approaching the final furlong. Hand over to James shortly.
Yes, indeed, and interesting about this branding. The rest of us in the rest of the world are used to standing at a bus stop and seeing a bus branded for the wrong route coming along. That's a standard fare in many parts of the country. How do you avoid that, and what is the cost to your fleet size in having to have what must be a very rigid fleet control?
So we don't think there's much extra cost, other than the fact that we might have to buy red paint instead of blue paint and things like that, but actually there isn't much of a cost to that either. The biggest cost is having a plan, and that isn't a cost, that's just putting energy into having a plan and creating a culture around it. So we do not have extra spare buses lying around just to deliver this. We just make sure we have a plan and a culture. So, for example, we will only brand the right number of buses for the PVR, for what's needed on that route, and the rest are in a spare brand that usually will advertise something, whether it be the app, whether it be how great our drivers are, whether it's buses we have to be seen on, which was the first slide I've shown of the previous section. So it's all about having a plan and a culture and making sure the engineers are signed up to it, the drivers are signed up to it, the duty managers are signed up to it, and the finance people are signed up to it. And that is the biggest way you deliver it. I used to work at Trent Barton, as James said again. The ratio of spare buses at Trent Barton was the same as it's here, and it's the same as is a typical Stagecoach, First Arriva, whatever company. But it's about having a plan. But
one of the things that Trent Barton don't do is have double decks. You do. Is there any reason why you do that?
Because we like double deckers and our customers like double deckers. And I think, yeah, I mean, actually, one key point that we do here, we market the fact we have double deckers. We market the view from a bus. And I think that was one thing I did miss at Trent Barton, was actually double deckers were not seen as things that the view was that customers wanted to always see the driver and make them feel secure. And actually, if you want to provide extra capacity, you did it by frequency. Well, actually, on some of our interurban routes, we can't do it by frequency. And on routes like the 36, you can't really afford, not necessarily, I don't mean afford from a cost basis, but you don't really want to run it every more than 10 minutes, because then you just get bunching and a whole host of things you can't manage. But on Coastliner, it's the most scenic bus route. We were awarded that a few years ago. It wouldn't be as scenic, as enjoyable if it was on a single deck bus, let's face it. And also a double deck allows you much more capability to create a nice environment, because you've got more space to create a nice environment for customers too.
And a coach?
Coach, we've tried coaches. We tried coaches on our Cities app route, but again, the capacity couldn't meet some of our peak journeys. And also as well, we think that's where steps and so on are not something that some customers like to create. Slow boarding, very narrow entrance areas, narrow corridor as well, to get to seats. So again, we don't think the space and the practicality is there for coaches. We much like to play with the room a double deck bus creates, and you'll see hopefully in the pictures that I'm about to show you that we do create coach or better than coach type environments.
One last sort of change of direction in thinking. You mentioned the free fares on Sundays and in Harrogate. A couple of questions around that. One is, what does that do to journey times? That refers back to some of the conversation in the chat earlier on. And secondly, what are the commercials around it? Is it sponsored? Do you take it on the nose? How does it work?
So you'll notice as well that, well, I haven't mentioned it, but we don't carry third-party commercial advertising on our buses. If that space is valuable to them, it's valuable to us. But one ways that we found that you can actually get people to sponsor buses is for them to sponsor free fares. And that's what we've done with what we call Sunday Freeway in Harrogate. So we basically approached big local brands. So we've got Harrogate Springwater, we've got Slingsby Gym, we've got Bessie's and Taylors, and then we've got people like the Harrogate Bid, and they funded basically the difference. So the revenue we would have lost on a Sunday, they've replaced via sponsorship of free buses. And that has grown use by 75% on those Sundays, and overall contributed to a growth on those routes of 10% since we put the electric buses on and launch that as a scheme. So that is something that's quite attractive. We're trying to see if we can pursue it in other areas as well. But yeah, that's how it works. And
Cool.
yes, it did have a positive impact on loading times as well.
Okay, let's move on. Last bit.
Okay, so you've seen the bus from the outside, and then one of the most critical points is this is the bit the customer spends most of their time thinking about the bus. This is the important bit, and often it can be the bit that's neglected. So, their first slide. So, you've seen the outside of a which-way, this is the inside of a which-way. And someone, when we first showed them a picture of this, I remember someone very senior, one of our local authorities said, that looks as good as a train. And I said, well, yeah, hopefully you find trains that look as good as that as well. So this is, again, where you have to work with people that want to work with you. And this, again, was the result of, I think, about 50 different meetings, 50s, with Alexander Dennis and Best Impressions saying, let's try and create a very nice bus. So again, the investment is often not in the money or the cost, it's about the time that you have to put in to get there. And again, it's done the result of research, traveling with customers, talking to customers, seeing what they like, seeing what they don't like, watching them behave, told to non-users, and creating this idea of saying, well, I look at that, I really want to be there. And I'll come to some of the points of detail. On the next slide, this is on the 36, where we have a 2+1 seating approach. Again, the 36 was all about how you attract car users. So this big factor for the car user was personal space. So you see we've got individual seats on the same side, and the seats you see on the other side, they're seats that you sit next to someone and you don't realise you're sitting next to someone because they're well spaced out. And you know, you can see the luxury approach that matches the black and red of the brand. You know, it's a place, you know, you look at that and think, well, yeah, I wouldn't mind sitting there for an hour, thank you very much. And that's the kind of thing we try and create. On the next slide, you see some of the point of detail of just how you create something that looks as good as you will see anywhere. And these are, again, when you work with professional designers who can make things look as good as that. You know, and Harrogate really keen on leather, and I know probably becoming a bit more of an issue now, but actually in Harrogate, you know, we don't have a one size fits all specification. But in Harrogate, when we said, do you want leather or do you want maquette or do you want other things, they really like leather. Their leather seats in Harrogate. I don't know, you know, it's obviously an aspirational thing. But then when we did something in Keighley and in Burnley, we don't want leather here. You know, we find it slippy, we find it this, we find it that. So again, there's individual concepts. I know people think the north of England is one place. It's not. You know, there are very different places, and you have to talk to your individual markets. On the next slide, yeah, you'll see. You know, it's just, you just want to be there, don't you? You just want to go and sit on that bus for an hour. Well, I do, but unfortunately for me, lots of other customers do as well. On the next slide, you'll see as well. So we spoke a lot about seating and finding the right kind of seat that's comfortable to sit on and a place. I mean, the true test as well is people fall asleep on the 36 all the time, and I think that's the true test of whether it's a comfortable journey or not. But you'll see there, glass roof, double glazing is standard, so it doesn't get misty, so you can see out the window. We did some research with our customers. 50% of our customers on the 36 look out the window. What do you do on your journey? I look out the window. So we give them Wi-Fi, we give them USB, give them else. Actually, half of them just like the fact of just sitting there and just relaxing and looking out the window. And again, back to James' point about why double deckers probably work better for that. But you'll see there, glass roof and creates a really nice environment, having a visual of the bottom of the staircase so people can see what seats are available upstairs as well. And a staircase that says, come upstairs. You know, you actually want to go up there, and you create the staircase as a sort of sense of theatre and show of getting people to walk up the stairs rather than hovering downstairs. Next slide. And again, use the brand, use the locality, make the space feel good. You know, seek out opportunities on buses where you can make the space feel like somewhere that you want to be. So even what is just a bit of laminate that is there just because the staircase and the fuel tanks behind it, actually let's make it look nice. And that's what we do, as you can see there on the which way. And no signs lecturing customers to do this and do that. You know, that's what your driver's for, your customers there for. Most people know what to do, so don't litter it all with notices shouting at everybody. You don't get that when you go into an Apple store or a nice restaurant or a nice cafe or whatever, places you like to spend your money. Let's make buses as good as the places you want to spend your money, and let's not lecture customers and shout at them. Next, and you see some of the individual points on our latest specification. This is on our Sky Class specification on which way. So you'll see there an elbow seat. That's an elbow a pad for people to rest their elbow. You've got a space for your coffee or whatever. You know, we encourage people to again bring. You know, if in your car you have a coffee cup holder on a train to go. Well, that's what we want to do on a bus as well. And you'll see there all the points of difference. There's the logo and a tag there. You know, this is all very points of detail, and there's lots of time spent going through the detail here. Next slide. We have wireless charging as well. So as well as USB charging, you see the wireless charging is embedded in the table, so you can lay your phone down it, lay your device on it, and it's done through it's inducted wirelessly. It's a charging points there. On which way we have several tables as a 4. We have several areas where it's a double with one table in front of them as well. And again, you know, creating that different parts of the bus for different journey types, commuters, individuals, people, couples travelling together, and you'll see that's how we've laid out the buses on which way. So you cater for individual journey types like that. Next slide. And there's an example of the other wireless charging unit we have, where you can plonk your phone in it and literally put your earphones in. You can watch it like it's a TV screen. A bell stop, a reading light, you know, all sorts of things in there to make you feel like you're an individual on the bus. That's the downstairs, Sky Class. That's the Cities app variation in red. And again, you know, given that right kind of welcome, really clever use of lighting as well. Not blurry in your face lighting, but quite moody lighting that creates that right level of comfort and quality for customers. Yeah, another zoom in there of the sort of individual seats as well. Yeah, next. And another example of then the Cities app variation. That's the upstairs there. And again, points of detail with the seat types and things like that. It's worth it. It all creates the package. We don't do a bit of research says, was it worth spending 50p on that seat tag? I don't bloody know, but it all comes together to create that quality package. And again, some of our research also said, while the bus is full of technology as well, what commuters like to do is like to swap books with each other. So we've created what we call book club on Cities app on which we're on the 36, where we put books on a shelf and we encourage people to swap books. And amazingly, they usually stay there, apart from Harrogate, where they like to nick the books. But people in Burnley and York and Leeds are more honest, which is interesting. But you know, it's a very little cost. And actually, the drivers love going and topping up. You know, we give, you know, there's a tenner, go and find some more books, and it's just another part of giving people ownership and a stake in what they're doing. But again, customers love it, and we found that out by research, by talking to them. Next. And again, bins are important on buses as well, but it's how you do make them look good and make them the right size and not tiny fiddly things that are only allowed for tickets. People want to put rubbish in bins, but what we do as well, we also put a recycling area in the bin as well. So we're saying that we want to recycle your rubbish. We think lots of you do too. So let's create a bin for rubbish and a bin for recycling. We introduced that on our electric buses, which fitted in with the sustainability agenda, and now it's a standard point on all of our new refurbished buses. And there's a leaflet with leaflets in it as well. And then there's more of our sort of what we say as our standard interiors. This is our more local based interiors. So, you know, bright base maquette, cheerful, making use of the available space on the bus to talk about the brand and to talk up you know, extra selling points, and just use that opportunity to make people feel good and interested in your brand, so they come to like it and enjoy it as well. And then I think yeah, and then you know on the airport route, you know, show them and pepper the airports when they get off the bus, they know where they're going. Just little things like that, you know, follow the customer journey through to make customers you know, feel confident in what they're doing, and they feel like you're trying to help them as well. On our next up information, we've used celebrities. Jenny McAlpine is Fizz in Coronation Street, for those of you who watch Coronation, or those of you who don't watch Coronation Street. So she's the voice of Which Way. Harry Gratian, who used to be the local newsreader and a big celebrity in Yorkshire, he's the voice of the 36. He's told us he gets more tweets about being the voice of the 36 than he did about reading the news. And things like that, they're great. Just makes people smile that little bit more. And then next, there's an example of some of our next up information, shows the arrival time at the bus at the final point as well, and very clear, you know, let's not make these things small, make it readable in all parts of the bus. And then finally, I'd like to think this sort of sums us up a bit as well. So on every bus, on the back of every leaflet, we say, if you're not happy and you didn't like it, please tell us, because that's so valuable to us, and in return we'll give you a free ticket for next time if we didn't make it happy. And that, we think, tries to sum up our approach in terms of how we trust our customers, how we want our customers to feel about us, but then how it drives our standards as we progress. Hopefully, a bit of a whistle-stop tour gave you a guided tour, and hopefully how your journey should be when you travel on our buses. But thank you very much for listening to me today. I can't promise that we get everything right all the time, and I can't promise all the answers. But that's why it's so good listening and talking to you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. And just going back to that slide in our heads, how many of those free tickets do you send out?
Hardly any. But I can assure you,
that.
more people read it than ask for it. If that
Sure.
makes sense.
I'm sure you're right. Right, now, a couple of things. We haven't got a huge amount of time, of course, but interesting question about things other than the bus. You've talked about the bus stops, but there's a question in the chat about the bus road quality. So in the BSIP process, has anyone thought about road maintenance and ride quality? You know, the thought of the bus that bumps along the bus lane in the gutter with, shuddering and shaking. Anything to say on that one quickly?
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. And I think we find, that there isn't a rattle-free bus. We try to find it, and we do a lot of work that I mentioned about what you do around that. And we did a lot of work, particularly with ADL. We're removing hand poles. You'll see on the one thing I probably should have mentioned, you see on the 36 interiors and the Sky Class stuff, we removed all the handle poles. So
that's a deliberate thing to do that, is it? That's another question.
Absolutely, yeah. And as well as it, because people don't, you don't legally need them. And actually people, we put grab rails on the seats as well, and it creates a more room environment, and it's another thing to rattle. So I think the first thing is, what can we do ourselves to make the bus not rattly? Because we know the road service isn't our power. But I fully agree with you. I mean, we try and deal with that locally. So we've got hot spots on our network where we know the road service is poor, that we approach local authority on, and we try to put them in some of our BSIPs. So yeah, it's great point.
Good. And a final question, going off in a different direction. What's your view about people who pay by apps and getting people to pay by apps rather than other forms of cash collection and so on and so on?
Well, I think we encourage it, but we're not on a race to eliminate cash on buses. Because again, if customers want to pay by cash, we find a way. It's simple. If someone wants to give us money, we let them give them their money. If they want to give it to us and wherever they want, we'll find a way of collecting it off them. And actually, in lots of the towns and cities that we're in, we still have quite a lot of cash for payers. So I think we try and encourage it, but we're not on a mission to eliminate it. We're not on a mission to make people feel bad because they do so. But yeah, we do try and, as you see, you'll see in all of our marketing, our app, and the ease of buying tickets on our app is something we encourage. It's more convenient to us, but we're not on a mission to make customers feel bad if they don't want to do it.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. It's our problem with these 1 hour slots that 1 hour isn't enough time, but we haven't got any more time, and all of us got other things to do. So unfortunately, we've got to the moment where we have to bring this to a halt. And I must say, first of all, a huge thanks to you, Alex, for sharing your enthusiasm. Listening to you, you cannot but be impacted by the sheer energy that's going into this from your side, and not surprising that people like what your company is doing. So it's been a truly fascinating session, and thanks to you, our audience, as well, for your interest and for all your comments and questions. A tremendous amount of stuff in the chat. Very, very useful. Don't forget that this program, of course, has been recorded and will be available to re-listen through Landor LINKS, or for people who are going to listen, it's well worth it. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the team at Landor LINKS, especially Mark and Juliana, who are in the background working so hard to make sure it all works. The same brilliant team, I might say, is working with us at BRT UK to present our first post-COVID in-person conference, which is to be in Liverpool. I can tell you today, the date is the 16th of March 2022. It's not that it's planned, it's going to happen. So if you're interested to keep, then do please keep that day free, and there'll be more details quite soon. Now, next week, a week today, on Thursday, the 18th of November, in the 5th of these 6 lunchtime masterclasses, we are travelling across the Irish Sea to hear from Tim Gaston of Transport for Ireland. And his subject is Bus Connects. That's a new thing over there. And he says they're reimagining bus services in Ireland's cities. So I think that's going to be just as interesting as the 4 presentations we've had so far. Remember, these BRT UK masterclasses are going on every week through November. So do register again and join us at 12:30 next week. So thank you again, Alex, and thank you all of you out there. This is James Freeman signing off for BRT UK. Until next week. Thanks and goodbye.